Interestingly, you have great places like the Resilience Lab. You have very interesting people who run it and participate in it. So a little bit about the Resilience Lab itself, and then how you came to that and why this is such an important endeavor on your campus.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, so I'm Megan, and it's great to be out here from Seattle, Washington, where it is lovely. So just as a little backstory, I come to this work as a licensed mental health therapist who spent about a decade in community-based mental health, working primarily with young people who were part of the kind of greater Seattle region, many of whom had multiple marginalized identities, including a lot of young people who were part of the greater LGBTQ community as young as 4 years old and up to college age. And I worked with the kids and their families. And I say that because after a decade of doing that work, I noticed that I was holding kind of two realities. One is that it was really important to teach these young people and their families skills and mindsets to support their mental health and well-being, different resilience skills and mindsets like how to cope with stress effectively, how to manage emotions, and et cetera. And the other reality was a lot of the mental health issues that they were facing had to do with the environment that they were in. So it was the home environment, the school environment, in their communities, and that as a mental health therapist, looking at the situation, I became really interested in the context or the environment, and began to ask the question, how can we begin to adjust the context in which youth and young adults are living in to support their mental health and well-being, as opposed to solely relying on mental health counseling and individual intervention? So being here today has been just like, I feel like I'm with my people, because we're talking about public health models. I don't know that I've ever been in a room till, 1:30 in the afternoon talking about public health models and social ecological, like systems interventions for mental health and well-being, so kind of redundantly. It's really refreshing and feels really important to me. So I come to this as like a family therapist too, where parents would bring their kids into counseling and say, help my kid, and I'd be like, let's leave the kid in the lobby and let's chat. Because parents and adults are really instrumental to this as well. So fast forward, I went to the University of Washington to examine this question, and that's how I became the director of the Resilience Lab, to really think about how could we shift the learning environment to improve mental health and well-being and take the onus of responsibility and the burden away from counseling centers alone. They have their place and their role, but the lines out the door, they're really burdened. And a lot of students, particularly those with these multiple marginalized identities, their mental health and well-being is a consequence of the environment. It's imposter syndrome, it's competitive environment, it's stress, it's loneliness. And that's not going to be fixed in individual interventions. It's going to be fixed when we change the space. So then JED Foundation partnered with us at the UW from 2016 to 2020. And if you haven't looked at JED's comprehensive framework, I wouldn't be here today talking about our work if it wasn't for JED, and I'm pointing to Nancy, and there's others here from the JED Foundation. Their comprehensive framework gives you the paradigm in which you can look at a university comprehensively and look at the different places, in addition to counseling, that you can adjust to improve mental health and well-being. And for me at the time, what was really interesting is that we hadn't tapped the academic side of the house. So Student Life was doing a lot. They were a big engine in this work, but our academic affairs was really like not very engaged and is, I mean, UW has 55,000 students, and we had this huge opportunity to activate the learning environment to promote mental health and well-being in classrooms. So I started directing the Resilience Lab, whose purpose is to do just that, and have been experimenting with different interventions that essentially I partner closely with student-serving staff and faculty in academic realm of the university. I'm very closely aligned with the Provost's office and the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I'm looking at interventions that can improve mental health and well-being vis-a-vis the classroom and other spaces.
I love that term, student-serving personnel and departments, because really that's everyone, right? That's everyone on campus, and it's great to make that distinction. What you're doing there, I think, is a fantastic example of what we've been talking about today. The Resilience Lab, if we want to talk a little bit more about how that actually works on campus, how students engage with the Resilience Lab, and please also talk about Be Real, because I love that program. So,
yeah, I thought I would talk about two programs briefly. I'll talk about Be Real, and I'll talk about another program that is really about like classroom instruction and how people teach and ways that can help promote mental health and well-being. So Be Real, I'll start with. It's a program that was started in 2017. A few people today have talked about the value of partnering with our research faculty on campus, and UW is a large public research university, so we have that to our advantage. In the psychology department, we have a wonderful researcher named Lily Lengua who directs the Center for Child and Family Wellbeing, and she authored a curriculum called Be Real that paired cognitive behavioral therapy with mindfulness and some other movement-based practices. Drew heavily from dialectical behavioral therapy, which is Marsha Linehan's work, also from the University of Washington. And we brought this 6-week, 90-minute skills group to students in residence halls in 2017. Pretty like normal type of undergraduate program for students who were in residence. We ran the program, did some waitlist control studies, and learned that students learned how to cope with stress more effectively, manage emotions, develop some interpersonal effectiveness skills, and be more compassionate to themselves and others. And there was a high degree, 98% of students were really satisfied with the program. So that was wonderful. And the students that we wanted to reach don't necessarily live in residence halls and come to that co-curricular type of programming. So the next thing that we did is I think what makes the University of Washington's approach unique is that we put a pause on students, and we had staff and faculty start participating in the group, the same group, and they took the 6-week program. And we taught them the same exact material, they were immersed in it, and they learned how to cope with stress effectively and manage emotions and be more interpersonally effective and have compassion to themselves and others. And that mattered not only in their roles as students serving staff and instructors, but also like as parents, and also like on their teams, and also when they got an email from like their boss. You know, they were like pausing and thinking about like, how do I want to move from like being reactive to having a more deliberate response? Maybe I need to take a beat. You know, so they learn the skills and mindsets that we want our students to learn, but so often we put the onus of responsibility on students and say, you need to learn all this stuff. But the adults in the schoolhouse forget that we also need to like learn and practice these skills and mindsets too. And to me, that's how we create the culture change, is that we don't just rely on the student behavior change, but we also like really start to embody these skills and mindsets ourselves. And so the work of the Resilience Lab has been to take this program, to teach it to staff and faculty. We've taught 700 staff and faculty have gone through this program. And then 175 of them have been trained to facilitate it. And they're not clinicians, like I'm a clinician. They're academic advisors, they're professors who are really interested. They are folks across campus, interdisciplinary, who now know how to facilitate Be Real, and they can do it at the Ethnic Cultural Center or with the College Assistant Migrant Program or at the LGBTQ Center or in Atmospheric Sciences, and they are the students' natural mentors and they can lead the groups. So it's scalable, and it's well-researched, and it's creating a shift in like not just the kid but the parent, that whole family therapy model too. So to me, I just think about these nested systems in the way in which the students existing in a classroom that's in a school and college and that's on the campus. And what we're aiming to do is kind of like saturate all of those environments. And so, for example, like an entire school will be in Be Real. So we have an information school. Their staff, faculty, and their dean, they took Be Real. And they took it before they introduced it to students. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the difference. I'll just end the Be Real pitch with saying that was that?
I have a question about Be Real too.
Okay, yeah. So we wanted to see if it works outside of the University of Washington. So we've had approximately 25 campuses participate in a multi-campus cohort where representatives take the course online. It works on Zoom and in person. They do it online, so there might be like 10 or so colleges there, like people who show up. And then they've been facilitating Be Real on their campuses for students. So we've had 250 students from these 25 other colleges across the United States participate in Be Real, and we're studying the impact on other colleges, and that's looking promising as well. So for folks interested in exploring the idea of Be Real on their campus. The next multi-campus cohort begins in September.
Thank you. The substance, the learning that's taking place in the Be Real program, I'm going to ask you a little bit about that, because I understand, and again, it's really cool that it's based and developed in a research lab. It has a lot to do with coping, right? Coping and resilience. Can you talk a little bit about that in relation to everything we've heard today about the students that we're serving? And I also wanted to ask you about the evidence around that. I know that was part of the design. Are you finding that that is part of the success of the program, the coping resilience piece?
Yeah, it was both part of the design and part of the success. I mean, like yesterday we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy. That was one of the recommendations from John Hay around what he would recommend for folks. And so Be Real is completely drawn from practices from cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and what Lily was exploring was the relationship of when you pair cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness, what effect that has. And I think in terms of the conversations we've been having today, there have been a couple threads. One has been largely around technology. And so in my mind, I've been thinking a lot about how the more we can develop conscious awareness, and students can develop conscious awareness, but again, we have to start with ourselves, the more we can be aware of our utilization and stop being on automatic pilot and just like scrolling, and be aware of when we're like actually present with people and present in ourselves. And technology sometimes draws us away from that awareness of being with ourselves and others. And so I think teaching these skills and mindsets fundamentally would change our relationship to technology as kind of like at a more root level, because you're developing more awareness of even what you're doing in the moment. And then in terms of the piece around like democracy and dialogue and polarization, I think these skills and mindsets help us have the capacity to cope with stress effectively and understand our automatic stress response and our reactivity. And so for students, when we're able to teach them basic like mindfulness and compassion-based practices, hopefully it allows them to be able to sit with somebody who holds a different perspective and manage the stress and anxiety that comes with that, and be able to listen and be curious and take someone else's perspective without getting dysregulated. So I think that Be Real is kind of a fundamental program that helps enable people to have a shift in their relationship to technology and dialogue at a more base level.
And again, working alongside student affairs, counseling services, but not specifically embedded into them, and in fact part of the larger community, which is so great.
Yeah, I won't speak about it a lot today, but would happily engage anybody. But having a consortium on campus or a collaborative across campus of folks from all the different factions of the university has been a way of being successful with the work. And so I've, since 2017 or so, led a student well-being collaborative, which really is similar to kind of the approach of the Okanagan Charter, really having what's referred to as like a collective impact approach to addressing mental health and well-being, which is when you have everybody on the same page that's like, this is what we're all wanting to do, right, is improve mental health outcomes and academic outcomes. Then we need to be working collaboratively toward the common vision instead of at cross purposes. And interestingly, I'll just say that Jeff Walker and Nancy and I are part of the Flourishing Academic Network, which is a constellation of universities across the United States who are also thinking about how do we work in collaboration and in partnership with each other around research and curriculum and systems change, and not at cross purposes as colleges and universities, because we want this common outcome. Why is it universities are typically kind of competitive for good reasons, and it fosters innovation, but there's also a really important opportunity to partner and move the needle. And so the Flourishing Academic Network brings together people who are interested in that purpose.
That's great. I'm so glad you mentioned FAN, and Jeffrey's here from UVA. Thank you so much, Megan. For anyone who would like to hear more or get more information about Megan's great work at the University of Washington, your information is in the packet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.